AsalaamuAlykum, I'm your sister Naomi Saif, and today we're going to talk about how the Muslims, the Arabic culture, influence some of Spanish culture. So I think that it's important that we understand how the Muslim slash Arabic Al-Andalus, that time when Spain was predominantly Muslim, how that has changed and affected the Hispanic Spanish culture today. So I'm just going to go over, just for example, just the language, how some of our words have changed because of that that time frame. So first of all, we're going to go back. This is a story before Christopher Columbus. You know, when you were in school, they never talk about too much prior to Christopher Columbus. They make it seem like the Catholic monarch and the conquistadores and all these Catholic and these Christian crusaders, that they came to save these barbaric savages that were just, you know, lost and in dark age. No, that's not what was going on. That's not what was going on in West Africa. That was not what was going on in Al-Andalus, Spain. And I'm just speaking of places of Mayan ancestry. What was going on before Christopher Columbus came was Al-Andalus, was a Spanish, Muslim, Jewish, Christian togetherness. I'm sure it wasn't perfect. I'm sure there was drama, but everyone had the right to practice their religion. So, and we know that Christopher Columbus, some people think that he's Spanish. Yeah, he's not. He was Italian, and he came. He was an explorer, whatever. And he worked for King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella II, I believe. Yes, Queen Isabella II, and they were the Catholic monarch. They were the heads of the Catholic monarch at that time, and they were forcing their Catholicism on everyone. So that's when Christopher Columbus came. And an interesting fact that, especially now that everyone's doing their DNA, that I'm kind of realizing is that, so we know that Christopher Columbus, or what's his name, Cristobal, whatever, when he went to the Caribbean, that was his really first stop. We are noticing that a lot of, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, especially Dominicans, perhaps even Haitian, those are coming up with a lot of Italian lineage, not so much Spain, because Christopher Columbus, again, was Italian, and then he would come. I think he took just a few trips. Then after that, you know, they started to send more Spanish conquistadores. For example, in Puerto Rico is Juan Ponce de Leon. So that's kind of like where a lot of the Puerto Rican lineage is more Spaniard, more heavily Spaniard, some Italian too. Getting back to the influence on the language. So just going to go over a couple of words. For example, the two of the most popular ones that we say in the Hispanic culture that we may not even have realized that came from the Arab, the Muslim time, is ojalá. Ojalá comes from the Arabic word inshallah. It means the same thing, if God is willing. And then also ole. You know, when they do the bullfighting, ole, ole, that is by Allah, by Allah. So that's also Arabic. Another word is usted. Usted is a word that we want when we're saying you, but we're speaking to someone of like an elder, someone that is more of a formal way of saying you. It's from the Arabic word ustada, if I'm saying it correctly, which is almost like a title of someone that's educated. Hasta, like, you know, hasta mañana, see you till tomorrow. So like the Arabic word ata. And forgive me if I'm saying the Arabic, if I'm saying it in Arabic incorrectly. But that's where it comes from. Hasta comes from the Arabic word ata, and it means the same thing. Barrio comes from bari, neighborhood. Aceite. Aceite means oil in Spanish. You know, it comes from aceite, which is literally like olive oil, but it's just the same. Azúcar. Azúcar comes from sucar, the Arabic word sucar. Arroz comes from rus, rice. Limón from limón. Loco, the Spanish word loco, is from lauca, I believe. And lima from lime. Asesino. Asesino doesn't mean assassin in Arabic. It comes from the word Ashashin, someone who smokes hash, but that's where they got the word from. And then alfil, the chess piece, alfil, it comes from, it means the elephants in Arabic, and almohada, pillow. So when the Muslims came to Spain, they brought their culture, and prior to this, nobody was using a pillow, almohada, or that concept of a pillow, and so that's where that word comes from. There is so much. There is so much. I mean, even looking at our names. During this time when the Catholic monarchs took over, they forced people to take on Catholicism. You were either forced to convert, or you would be persecuted. Or you had to flee. A lot of the Jewish community had to leave. They had to seek refuge in other countries. And those that were left behind took on and had to be baptized and change their names, and they were forced into Catholicism. So it's so strange to me how when they're talking about the story of Islam and they say it was spread by the sword. No, Christianity was spread by the sword. Like, for real, we need to really do our history. It was forced. It was forced. There's nothing in history that says, as far as the takeover, as far as people leading lands and presidents and people in positions of power, that said, I am Catholic, I am Christian, however, you have the right to be of your religion, outside from America and countries that practice democracy. Alhamdulillah. I'm talking about in this aspect, in those days, it wasn't like that. That was only in Muslim countries, and so when the Muslims came, they also, they brought their deen, their way of life, So a part of Islam is that you cannot force anybody to be a Muslim. So when they came, and first they came to help, the Muslims did not just go on their own. The Christians were fighting amongst the Trinitarians, and it was these two different forms of Christianity were fighting, and one of them seeked the aid of the Muslims to come and, sort things out, because it was starting to get ugly, a lot of bloodshed. And so the Muslims came and helped them, and even gave weapons to the Jews and the Christians to fight against their oppressors. And, one only needs to look into the history. Not saying that everything was perfect, and not saying that the world is perfect and the Muslim world is perfect. No, it's not. Nobody is perfect. And not saying that the Catholics and the Christians are bad. No, not at all. I'm just speaking of this story when it comes to the Christopher Columbus discovering America and things of that nature. We're not even going to go into that, because he didn't discover America. He was lost. He thought he was in the West Indies. And then what he did after that was a genocide and murder and slavery. And then they went on and got my other ancestors from West Africa, and we know how the story goes. So we need to look at Islam as something that's more familiar than we realize. Islam is closer to you than you realize, especially if you are of Hispanic origin. Another interesting fact is that if you are of Hispanic origin, the odds of you having Arabic blood is kind of high. I have 5%. So be very careful as to how you are looking at all the news and things that are going on, those that are watching that are not Muslims, and thinking well, why she's Puerto Rican? Why is she a Muslim? That is so that has nothing, that is so strange. No, I went back to my roots. I went back to my Spanish roots. I went back to my West African roots, and I went back to a way of life that we were all created, which is a way of life that you are submitted to only the one who created you, not mankind. We don't pray to someone who was born and dies. We don't pray to someone who needs water and food. And we don't seek the aid of people who are in the same position as we are. We are all at the mercy of God. So, inshallah, this message inspires you to do your own history, no matter what your background is, even if you're Muslim, even if you are Arab, just it's good to know your own history. And especially if you're Muslim, if you're convert, if you're not, and especially if you are of the ancestry that comes from Spain or the African diaspora, because we are the ones that, people come at and says, what are you doing? You're not Arab. What are you doing? You're not doing this. What are you doing? You're not doing that. But they forget this is what our original people were doing prior. This is what happened before Christopher Columbus came and offered us free jobs and housing and dragged us over here. This is, for the British also did the same thing. And brought upon slavery. You know, this is what one in every three slaves, of the slaves, one in every three was believed to be Muslim. So, and even when Christopher Columbus came, one of his earlier writings has it where he saw a mosque in Cuba. So this Islam is nothing new. They just wiped it out of the history books. They just haven't told you about it. They haven't told you that your ancestors were probably Muslims. So welcome back if you are Muslim, and please do some research, and please know that Islam is closer to you than you may realize if you're not. Assalamu alaikum.